Sometimes you're right, and I think this one is going to be big. Because the question needs to be, is Bryan Kohberger going home? Guys, I'm going to show you some shit today that kind of continues off of the video I made yesterday, but we're also going to talk about News Nation and how fraudulent they are. I'm going to show you the paperwork, the documents. It looks to me like Bryan Kohberger is going home. I'm thejbgunner. This is Crime Time. Let's get things started. Let's do it. Son of a bitch, I forgot the headphones. Fuck it. Hurry up. Son of a bitch. I'm just happy, so I don't give a fuck. Guys, welcome once again to Crime Time. I'm thejbgunner. Before we get started with this story, I want to say thank you to everybody that supports the channel. Regardless of the method you use, whether it's Cash App, Patreon, Venmo, PayPal, shout out to the Gun Squad. I couldn't do this each and every day as often as I do if it was not for you. So thank you guys so much. If you too find my content valuable, feel free to hit the links down below. Support the show and join the Gun Squad today. While you're down there, you can find some of my other channels if you get into gaming, news, politics, any of that nonsense. Guys, I'm just going to jump right into this because this has got me giddy. Now, I've argued with many of you that have sat here and said I need to go with the evidence and that Bryan Kohberger is guilty. I've told you since the beginning, I didn't think so. I told you there's not enough evidence to convict Bryan Kohberger, and I've also told you that, in my opinion, Moscow, Idaho, and their police department rushed to make an arrest because they wanted to get this done before the next semester of school. Now, why? Because the school is 50% of Moscow, Idaho's economy. I believe that I've been vindicated. Many other people are starting to see things for what they are. I'm going to show you in this the paperwork. Because ultimately, the defense wanted to call in Bethany Funke, one of the surviving victims of the Idaho murders, wanted to call her in, and Bethany Funke is fighting it. Now, the investigator and the affidavit said that because her testimony could be exculpatory evidence that exonerates Bryan Kohberger. Remember when Bryan Kohberger said it, that he would be exonerated? He said it in Pennsylvania. He said it again in Moscow, Idaho. I believe that we are on the verge of that exoneration. Let's go ahead and get on over here, guys. Let's go ahead and jump on over here because there's some things I want to show you. Number one, what I want to show you is how fake News Nation is. Now, this is a big story. If you look at News Nation, let me ask you guys a question. News Nation's been leaking shit even though there's a gag order. News Nation has been reporting all kinds of rumors. Everything they can about Bryan Kohberger in order to shit on Bryan Kohberger or make him sound guilty to you, the public. This is actual documentation. Brian Enton even has talked about it on Twitter. But you know what you do not see on News Nation? Any videos regarding this documentation, this quashing attempt of the subpoena or the subpoena in general. Why is this? Why would they not report on something when they've reported on everything? Let's look at the last Bryan Kohberger video. Let's go ahead and scroll on down here. We're going to go back, how long ago? Hold on, scroll. 19 hours ago. Sources, Kohberger was known for being sexist. That's their last Kohberger video. How come they're not reporting on the subpoena for Bethany Funke or the attempted quashing of the said subpoena by Bethany Funke? How come they're not reporting on this? Is it because this actually is quite pro-Kohberger? They did the same thing when the investigation came out, when it became obvious that the cops are on internal affairs investigation for the whole Brady Giglio material with the defense. Court documents reveal prosecutors have shared potential Brady Giglio, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, material with the defense. The information has been sealed by the court. A lot of things have been sealed by the court. We're going to talk about that today because the entire gag order went to the Idaho Supreme Court. And unfortunately for us, in a 5-0 ruling, the Supreme Court in Idaho voted for the gag order to remain in place. I wonder why. I wonder why they want so much of this case gagged when it comes to, because think about it. If the lawyers could talk, the lawyers would be able to tell us what this potential information what Bethany Funke is, but they're not able to because of the gag order. And so we unfortunately got to deal with two things. Rumors from News Nation, clickbait from Tyler Zeller or whatever the fuck his name is, and then ultimately real news, which is the documents that are released in this case, which we'll take a look at here in just a second. Unfortunately, we are not getting real content or real information when it comes to this case, but it's a rarity. And even situations like this where the real information is out here in documents, the so-called news, like News Nation, they're not reporting on it. Now, what am I talking about? For you guys that do not know, this is the affidavit and for a motion. Let me show you what it is. In the District Court of the 2nd Judicial District of State of Idaho and for a county of Latah County. An affidavit in support of motion for out-of-state service. This is the State of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger. Now, this is the affidavit for the subpoena of said witness, Bethany Funke. Now, what's really interesting about this is me and you guys, we've been talking about the potential of one of these surviving roommates, knowing Kohberger, knowing real information. I want you to listen to this. We all looked at Dylan as the potential person. Many of us forgot all about Bethany Funke because there just nothing was ever said about Bethany Funke. Let's go here because I want to show you guys these documents. Richard Bethany, being first duly sworn upon oath, deposes and says. Now I want you to understand this. Bethany, who is a representative for Bryan Kohberger's defense, I want you to understand. People are not going to come out here and make public declarations like what you're about to see in this affidavit, unless, why would they put their career on the line when it comes to such a major case if they did not know that the evidence was going to be indeed exculpatory? And we'll get to that point here in just a second. Let's go see what it says. It says, I am a criminal investigator hired by the defense to assist in the representation of Bryan Kohberger. This is a criminal investigator. This is not necessarily a lawyer. This is not anything like that. I was asked by the appointed counsel, Ann C. Taylor, to investigate the alleged incident which led to the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. Bryan is charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. The death took place in a 3-story home. There are 2 bedrooms on each floor, bathrooms on each floor, and a kitchen, dining, and living room on the middle floor. Mr. Kohberger is alleged to have entered the house around 4 a.m., which we'll talk about that another time, too, while 6 people were sleeping/present, killing 4 people in 2 separate rooms. The people killed were located in 2 bedrooms, one on the 2nd floor and one on the 3rd floor. Bethany Funke's bedroom was on the 1st floor. The other surviving roommate's bedroom was on the 2nd floor. Bethany Funke was interviewed by the police on several occasions. Listen to that. Bethany Funke was interviewed by the police on several occasions. Now, let me ask you a question. When Dylan Mortensen was interviewed by the police, we saw her words all throughout the affidavit. Why is it that we don't see Bethany Funke's words throughout the affidavit? Why is it that we immediately, with this case, have this situation when it comes to the Brady Giglio material? I'm wondering if her words were intentionally left off the affidavit by one of these cops that are being internally investigated in regards to the Kohberger case. Now, you may say, why would they do that, JB? Why would there be any kind of police cover-up? Well, I believe it's a statewide cover-up. A study completed by Stephen Peterson and Stephen Poole, an analysis of economic growth of Moscow and the regional economy 2013, concluded that approximately 50% of the local economy is supported by the University of Idaho for all sources of spending, and that every student at UI creates $57,400 in sales. 50% of that city's economy comes through the college. We all asked ourselves, because we felt like it was rushed, right? It just felt rushed to me. In my opinion, They rushed her. They had to get a defendant. They had to get it before the semester, the spring semester started, or winter, or wherever that's called, if it starts in January or whenever that is. In my opinion, they needed to make the town feel safe again. If you go back to the original statements, remember when they said it was a targeted attack and everybody was still safe? Remember when they said that? Because they wanted people to feel safe. They wanted people in that town, potentially people that were going to come to the University of Idaho to spend that $57,000 per student to the local economy. They wanted them to feel safe doing it. They wanted to make sure they got these students back in school, not online school, back in this town and in the economy as quick as possible. In my opinion, that is why the whole Brady Gigolo, whatever the fuck situation is going on with internal affairs. In my opinion, that is why this arrest was made, and it seemed like it was out of nowhere. There's no real evidence here, and we've been saying this. There was no real evidence in this. Okay, we got the touch DNA on the knife sheath. But what happens, okay? What happens if maybe Bryan Kohberger had been fucking Bethany Funke? What happens if we find out that knife sheath was already in the house prior to that night? What happens if any of those statements are true? What happens if we find out that Bethany Funke was actually out on the town with Bryan Kohberger? We don't know. We don't know. But let's get back to this. All I'm saying is what if? What if, right? Let's get back to this whole thing. So Bethany Funke was interviewed by the police on several occasions. She disclosed things she heard and things she saw. But those things were never mentioned in the affidavit. Why was Dylan's mentioned in the affidavit, but Bethany's wasn't? But let me tell you something else we know. That both Bethany and Dylan pointed Bryan Kohberger out in the little lineup that they gave him. How is it that Bethany could have pointed out the killer if she didn't see or hear anything? Because if we look at the original affidavit, that's what it seemed like. And then we look at this affidavit, and it says that she interviewed by the police on several occasions, and she disclosed things that she heard and things she saw. Bethany Funke was present at the home 8 hours later when was present at the home 8 hours later when the police were called, arrived on the scene and discovered the homicide. So when the police got there, Bethany Funke was there, which we've heard anyway. Let's go ahead and go to the other part of this. Let's continue. During the course of my investigation, it became known to me that Bethany Funke has information material to the charges against Mr. Kohberger. Material. Portions of information Ms. Funke has is exculpatory to the defendant. Oh, shit. Now, you may say, what does exculpatory mean, JB? Let's check out what exculpatory means. Exculpatory evidence is evidence favorable to the defendant in a criminal trial that exonerates or tends to exonerate the defendant of guilt. Son of a bitch. It is the opposite of inculpatory evidence, which tends to present guilt. What does exonerate mean? Because this is the word Bryan Kohberger used. Exonerate, especially of an official body, it means to absolve someone from blame for a fault or wrongdoing, especially after due consideration of the case. Release someone from a duty or obligation. Oh, shit. Now, you may say to yourself, well, this is someone on Bryan Kohberger's team. Yes, this is a criminal investigator. Why would he put his career on the line to make a statement such as this? Ms. Funke's information is unique to her experiences and cannot be provided by another witness. Bethany Funke resides in the state of Nevada and it is necessary to subpoena this witness because the witness's testimony is material and necessary to this case. Now, this was subscribed and sworn on the 22nd day of March. Now, I'm curious about this Giglio thing. When did this whole thing take place? New court documents in the case of the man accused of killing 4 students show Latah County and prosecutors are sharing new evidence regarding an officer involved in the case. Now, I want you to understand, that, for instance, this article, and I got to find out exactly when this was, when the whole Giglio or whatever the fuck, when all that, or the whole Brady thing, we need to figure out when all of that news initially broke. But here, this is showing published March 28th. Let's go back. What is, all right, March 28th, March 30th. All right, when does new documents, March 29th. Do you see what I'm saying? If you look back at all of this, documents of protection were filed on Monday, March 27th, prohibiting anyone to discuss the contents of the internal affairs material. Now let's go back to when this was filed. This was March 22nd. So the whole Giglio or Brady shit was after this affidavit existed. I wonder why that would be. I wonder if throughout the investigation, this criminal investigator used parts of things that Bethany Funke had said, and that is what led to the internal affairs investigation into the cops. Once again, touching back on why would they cover it up. We've talked about the colleges. We've talked about this. We've talked about it being in the best interest of the state, the city, and the school to kind of cover this up. Meanwhile, we have her lawyers. I want you to see this. Motion to quash foreign subpoena. Comes now Kelly Ann Valoria, counsel for Bethany Grace Funke, and respectively moves to quash the foreign subpoena out of state commission obtained by Evelyn Grosnick, the interim Washoe County public defender on behalf of defendant Bryan C. Kohberger. This motion is made and based upon the attached points and authorities, all papers and pleadings in the file herein, and my evidence and argument to be heard in the matter. So we're going to listen to some of this. Facts. On April 3rd, 2023, Evelyn Grosnick, interim Washoe County public defender, sought and obtained an ex parte foreign subpoena, which was issued April 11th. So the subpoena was issued April 11th, that purports to require Bethany Grace Funke to appear in the 2nd Judicial District Court of the state of Idaho at 8 a.m. on June 28th, and for the duration of the trial or when released by the court to testify in the above-named case. The items provided in support of this subpoena were in ex parte, request for the foreign subpoena, out-of-state commission, blah, blah, blah. The affidavit in support of the motion for out-of-state service further claims that Ms. Funke, whose name is repeatedly misspelled, see what they're doing, right, has information material to the charges against Mr. Kohberger. Oddly enough, they're misspelling some shit. Portions of information Ms. Funke has is exculpatory to the defendant. These statements are conclusory without support, and there is no further information or detail pertaining to the substance of the testimony, its materiality, or the alleged exculpatory information of Mrs. Funke, or why it would be entertained at a preliminary hearing. Moreover, the subpoena was issued by the clerk of the court without hearing. No hearing has been set for Ms. Funke to address those concerns. The motion, see, this is fucked up, because ultimately that's what they're trying to do, is set up the hearing to address these concerns. But essentially her lawyer is saying, well, the concerns aren't in the motion. Well, that's what. So you see what's happening here. They're trying to quash it. Argument: the court should quash the foreign subpoena issued purporting to compel Ms. Funke's attendance at the IDAHO preliminary hearing in this case. NRS blah, 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 through NRS blah, 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 governs the issues of subpoena in a criminal court. NRS blah, 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 through NRS blah, 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 governs the procedure for securing the attendance of a witness for testimony outside of the state. I wonder if that's why she left the state to begin with. I wonder if that's what this was about. She knew this case was coming. Don't get me wrong. Her friends had got murdered. I understand. NRS in particular addresses the process for summoning of a Nevada witness to testify in another state. Specifically, NRS blah, blah, blah requires the court to fix a time and place for the hearing. It's already been fixed. Before it can issue any of the order directing testimony in another state. This hearing is necessary to provide a venue where the judge determines that the witness is material and necessary. That is, will not cause undue hardship to the witness to be compelled to attend and testify in the prosecution or grand jury investigation in another state. And that the laws of the state in which the prosecution is pending or grand jury investigation has commenced or is about to commence and any other state through the witness may be required to pass by an ordinary course of travel, whatever. Once the procedure is followed, the burden is met. Then and only then shall the judge issue a summons with a copy of the certificate attached directing the witness to attend and testify in the court where the prosecution is pending, or where a grand jury investigation has commenced or is about to commence at the time and place specified in the summons. In any such hearing, the certificate shall be prima, I don't know what the fuck that word is, facie, I'm just going to call it facial, evidence of all the facts stated therein. Moreover, there is no authority for an Idaho criminal defendant to summon a Nevada, you hear what they're trying to say? To summon a Nevada witness to Idaho for preliminary hearing. There is also no authority for Idaho, There is also no authority from the, God damn it, where'd it go? Hold on, let me get back to it. Here we go. There is also no authority for an Idaho criminal, and then it cuts off. Let's go to here. From a judge merely states that Ms. Funke may be a material witness. This is insufficient under the law for this foreign subpoena to stand. Lastly, as this court is well aware, a preliminary hearing is limited to the finding of probable cause rather than reasonable doubt. Which, do you see what they're trying to do? Which is evidentiary burden at trial. This is the same standard in both Idaho and Nevada. Specifically holds that preliminary is not a substitute for trial, and the purpose of preliminary hearing is to determine whether a public offense has been committed and whether there is sufficient cause to believe that the accused committed it. But here's the thing I got a problem with. If the lawyer for Kohberger and this investigator believes that there is exculpatory evidence here and that it is material, why, to me, the state of Idaho has to grant this. This isn't a situation where it's maybe exculpatory. Maybe she may be a material witness. The bitch was there. The bitch was there and provided several interviews to the police. The truth of this is that Kohberger and his lawyer is probably basing all of this off the interview she did with the police. So I don't see how the judge can deny this whatsoever. Let's get back to it. Arguably then, even if Ms. Funke possesses exculpatory evidence, which remains unknown, there is no place or reason to present that evidence at a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing requires the state to offer competent evidence. But here's the thing. See, do you see what they're doing here? She was like, they're basically like, even if Bethany knows some shit that will exonerate Kohberger, a preliminary hearing isn't the place for it. See, I disagree with that. At any point in time, that evidence can be presented because you may have to dismiss charges against Bryan Kohberger. There is no right or wrong time for evidence that lets an innocent man out of jail. If there's evidence that lets the innocent man out of jail, let that evidence be released right now. Fuck waiting for June. Let that evidence be released right now and let Kohberger go home. Fuck this shit. Hold on. A preliminary hearing requires the state to offer competent evidence to support probable cause and convince the magistrate that a trial should be held, not the issue of the innocence or guilt in the defendant. But if there's exculpatory evidence that would convince the magistrate to not fucking hold the trial. See, do you see the games that they're playing? They're saying basically evidence needs to only go our way, which is kind of like what it seems like they're doing with the gag order. They're basically saying, yeah, there might be evidence that exonerates Kohberger, but that's not meant for the preliminary hearing. Why isn't it? If it should be out right now. These motherfuckers. Exculpatory evidence is an issue for trial, is what she says, which the documents presented misleadingly suggest the preliminary hearing to be. For all these reasons, the subpoena served upon Ms. Funke is improper. Accordingly, the court should quash the subpoena issued purported to compel Ms. Funke's attendance at the preliminary hearing in this case. Conclusion, the foreign subpoena was improperly issued. Basically, improperly. You hear, this is a technicality. There was no component of the statutes followed in issuing it, and the court should quash the subpoena issued to Ms. Funke now. Do you see what's going on here? Declaration of Kelly Ann Victoria, that I am the attorney of record for Bethany Grace Funke, a witness served with a foreign subpoena to testify in Idaho in the above caption action. That I am licensed to practice law in the state of Nevada, and I'm rendering this declaration on behalf of my client. That I have read the attached motion and know its contents. That the same is true of my own knowledge, except to those matters stated upon information and belief. And as to those matters, I believe them to be true. I swear under the penalty of perjury, blah, 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 which both lawyers did. Now, before we get into this next portion, look, man, as I said yesterday, I just want to make this clear. Bryan Kohberger is innocent until proven guilty. We should not, as a society, stand for any court not allowing evidence in immediately that could exonerate someone on trial for their life right now. I don't care if you agree with Bryan Kohberger or not. If there is evidence that can exonerate Bryan Kohberger right now, I say don't even wait for fucking trial. Put it out now. But this is why they have the gag order. And if you look right here, the Supreme Court, the Idaho Supreme Court has issued a unanimous 5-0 decision dismissing an original jurisdiction action brought by a coalition of media companies, seeking to vacate a gag order in the pending criminal action of state of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger, a high-profile murder trial that has drawn worldwide publicity. Basically, these people, they voted 5-0, the Idaho Supreme Court, to keep the gag order in place. So I want you to understand this gag order has done nothing but hurt Bryan Kohberger, because everything continues to leak to News Nation magically, even though this didn't. Ain't it crazy how everything leaked to News Nation but this fucking story? Everything leaked to News Nation but this story, but these documents. Ain't that nuts? So the news media is piling on Bryan Kohberger. There's a gag order where there's a gag order And they're trying to stop exculpatory evidence that could possibly exonerate Bryan Kohberger. But I think all of this is going to backfire. Because I think what we're learning out of this is Bethany Funke probably does have information that can exonerate Bryan Kohberger. Now, the question is what is that information? And why is everybody, whether it be the courts, the media, the state of Idaho, why the witnesses, why is it that everybody is so obsessed with keeping shit close to them that may be something good about Bryan Kohberger? That may be good news for Bryan Kohberger. I'll tell you why. Because they have to stick with the cover up and they have to convince you, a potential juror, that Bryan Kohberger is guilty and he's not deserving of any benefit of the doubt. That is what they want to do. But unfortunately, when you look at, fortunately, but unfortunately for them, when you look at their own internal affairs investigation, it's going to come to the light that the Moscow Police Department, Moscow in general, the Moscow courts, the news media, everyone, and they're piling on Bryan Kohberger, is simply, I'm going to be honest, I think Kohberger wins on appeal even if he is found convicted. There has to be a reason for this gag order. There has to be a reason that they're trying to quash evidence that could free Kohberger. Could it be because it's 50% of the revenue? If Kohberger's in jail, why would anybody? I've heard a lot of you guys in the comment section say, well, Bethany Funke, she's worried about retaliation if she shows up to trial. From who? If you believe it's Bryan Kohberger, Kohberger is about to get the death penalty, right? Maybe she fears retaliation because she knows she has information that can set Bryan Kohberger free. And you and me and every other American should want that information out there, because none of us should want a man that is innocent to go down and be found guilty and lose his life. I've told you for a long time, Bryan Kohberger, there's not enough to convict him. And each time some real news comes out, not News Nation leaks, every single time there's paperwork filed in this case, it's to the benefit of Bryan Kohberger. I think the prosecution is losing, and I think they know that. I think the state of Idaho knows that, and they want to keep all of that under wraps. After all, they got a new semester in business to handle. They got money to make, even if it costs the life of Bryan Kohberger. I stand by where I stand with this. I think Bryan Kohberger will walk, and I'm not even sure we're going to make it to June. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think, though. I think ultimately Bryan Kohberger's going home. And I think Bethany, she holds the answer to it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Dylan did too. Question is, why did the police keep her statements out of the affidavit? Cover up. Bryan Kohberger's innocent. I'm thejbgunner. This is Crime Time. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Is this a big nothing burger? Actually, I think it's the biggest development in the case. You could stick to your News Nation talking about Bryan Kohberger was a sexist all you'd like. This was the biggest information in this case to drop since the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. Guys, let me know in the comment section what you think. If you like what I do here and you find my content valuable, feel free to hit the links down below. Shout out to all the people out there that's seeing this for what it is. Shout out to Truth and Transparency. She's seeing it for what it is. Harsh Reality is seeing it for what it is. There's a lot of people seeing things for exactly what this is, and it's starting to change some public perception. It's not about whether you think Bryan Kohberger is guilty. It's will he be found not guilty? Will he be found guilty or not guilty? I'm starting to see it. I've been telling you, but it's all starting to play out right. It won't be long until I get to tell you guys a big I told you so. If you guys like the channel, hit the links down below. Support it. I love you guys. I'm thejbgunner. Sorry I took most of the day off, especially if you're on my politics channel. I ate some bad Burger King breakfast burrito and I've been a little ill. Love you guys. I'm out of here. Peace out.